Before Rome, before the churches, before any modern religion, there was Babylon. Not just a city, but a very smart, developed system, a template for power, worship, and control that echoes all the way into our current world order today. But what was Babylon, really? And was it truly the birthplace of the world's oldest known satanic religion? Well, actually, Babylon rose from the ashes of Sumer. After the mysterious fall of Sumer, its knowledge, priesthood, and pantheon did not disappear. They migrated north to a new center of power. That new center was Babylon. By around 1900 BC, Babylon had risen under King Sumu-Abum and would soon become the dominant power in Mesopotamia. By the time of Hammurabi, Babylon had codified the first legal system. But behind the law was ritual, hierarchy, and most importantly, religion. And so Baal, Marduk, and the roots of Luciferian worship evolved. The central god of Babylon was Marduk, son of Enki in the Sumerian tradition, but Marduk was more than a god. He was the rebellious son who challenged the old divine order and declared himself king of the gods. Sound familiar? In Canaanite culture, this archetype becomes Baal. In Hebrew texts, Lucifer. Names changed, but the blueprint remained. The light bringer, the rebel deity who wanted to ascend above the stars of God, as written in Isaiah 14, verse 12. The being who demanded worship, sacrifice, and obedience. In Babylon, this worship wasn't symbolic. There were child sacrifices, sexual rituals, and temple prostitution, all carefully recorded on clay tablets. Was the well-known Tower of Babel the first New World Order? The Tower of Babel wasn't just architecture. It was an attempt to reach the heavens, to hack the divine system and reclaim forbidden power. Genesis 11 tells us humanity was united with one language and one agenda: to make a name for itself and build a tower whose top is in the heavens. This was not just ego, it was cosmic rebellion, led by figures like Nimrod, possibly a Nephilim hybrid, and often associated with Luciferian archetypes. If we fast forward to the 6th century BC, we meet Nebuchadnezzar, the human face of the beast. Nebuchadnezzar II, Babylon's most powerful king, builds massive ziggurats, including the Hanging Gardens and what scholars believe may have been the remnants of the Tower of Babel. But Nebuchadnezzar wasn't just a king, he was a divine representative of Marduk Baal on earth. He demanded worship as a god-king, created massive golden idols, and threw dissenters into a fiery furnace for refusing to bow. The Book of Daniel even describes Nebuchadnezzar's descent into madness after his hubris, crawling like a beast for 7 years, before being restored after acknowledging the highest. Was this divine punishment, or the side effects of interdimensional knowledge and occult possession? Either way, Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar had become the blueprint for occult theocracies and Luciferian world rule. But we don't rely on myth alone. We have proof in stone. Babylonian tablets describe sacred rituals to Marduk and Baal involving blood, fire, and stars. Cylinder seals show hybrid beings, winged entities, and serpent gods, all consistent with later depictions of demonic or fallen beings. The Ishtar Gate, recovered and reconstructed in Berlin, displays dragons and lions, symbols of power, knowledge, and control. So, Babylon actually never died, did it? As far as we can see today, Babylon didn't fall. It morphed into Persia, Greece, Rome, the Vatican, and eventually into today's global hidden elite. The religions of power, Luciferianism, Satanism, and elite occultism can trace ritual lineage all the way back to Babylon. And the god they worship, he has many names: Marduk, Baal, Lucifer. But the agenda was always the same: rebellion, control, and worship through fear, as we see today as well. In episode 2, we'll go deeper into the cult of Ishtar Inanna, the goddess of war and sex, and how her archetype dominates not just temples, but today's fashion, music, and entertainment industries. Subscribe, click the bell, and share. And remember, you'll never know what you don't know. She was beautiful. She was terrifying. She was divine and deadly. Her name was Ishtar, or Inanna, depending on the era, and she was the Babylonian goddess of war, sex, and power. But make no mistake, she didn't vanish with ancient temples. She evolved. Today you'll find her in music videos, fashion runways, pop icons, and global events. This is the cult of Ishtar in disguise. Before she became known as Ishtar in Babylon, she was Inanna in Sumer, the goddess of duality, one of the most complex and controversial deities in history. She was all, the virgin and the whore, the mother and the warrior, the bringer of fertility and the goddess of destruction. In cuneiform texts, she rides lions, wears horned crowns, and is served by genderless priests in ecstatic rituals. Her temple rites included sacred prostitution, where sex was a pathway to divine power. Men and women alike offered their bodies to channel Inanna's energy. One of the oldest myths in human history, the descent of Inanna, tells how she descended into the underworld to visit her sister Ereshkigal, the goddess of death. Ishtar's descent became the origin of death culture. To pass each gate, Inanna had to remove one piece of clothing or jewelry until she stood naked before the Queen of Dead. She was killed, hung on a hook, and later resurrected, but not unchanged. This myth is seen by many as a prototype for modern resurrection cults, even prefiguring Mary Magdalene, Persephone, or the death and rebirth rituals in mystery schools. So where is Ishtar today, hidden in all of the symbolism in modern culture? Well, look closer. The symbolism is everywhere. Stars with 8 points, the Star of Ishtar. Owls associated with hidden wisdom in the night. The crescent moon, often worn on foreheads. Lions, the symbol of conquest and sexual dominance. Horns, not of cattle, but of divine right and seduction. The use of mirror imagery, duality, and transformation. In media, pop stars descending on platforms during award shows. Marina Abramovich echoing her descent into the underworld. Weird fashion shows that mix military aesthetics with hypersexuality and goat horns. Music videos that ritualize transformation, blood drinking, and imagery from innocence to rebellion. Artists like Beyoncé, Madonna, Lady Gaga, Doja Cat, and Sam Smith. Their performances often mirror ancient temple rites, including symbolic death, rebirth, and sexual domination. Even the annual Met Gala could be seen as a modern ritual, sacred garments, high priests of fashion, and tributes to the divine feminine through elite eyes. This isn't about superstition, because it matters. It's about mimetic archetypes that continue to shape consciousness, but subconsciously. Ishtar's cult was never destroyed. It was through media repackaged, sexualized, and exported. Today, her archetype is used by the elite entertainment industry to exploit the divine feminine for profit, blur the line between New Age spiritual awakening and hypersexual programming, enslaved through temptation, projection, worship of fame, social media acceptance, and money. Ishtar was not just a goddess. This long-time hidden queen of Babylon lives on today. She was a very smart program, one that still runs in our subconscious, generation after generation. Whether you see her in the flashing lights of the Super Bowl halftime shows or in the quiet algorithms of fashion influencers, video clips of advertisements, the Queen of Heaven is still here, still seductive, still deadly. In Episode 3, we'll enter the hidden world of the Babylonian priesthood, keepers of ancient diabolical rituals, astral calendars, and the original systems of surveillance and control. Subscribe, click the bell to keep you informed, unlock the code, and ask yourself, are you worshiping something ancient without even knowing it? Once, before surveillance systems, before spy satellites, before digital algorithms watching your every move, there was the Babylonian priesthood, not simply religious leaders, but a mix of scientists, architects, astronomers, sorcerers, and power brokers. This was the original deep state, and while Babylon may have crumbled, its priesthood system never died. It mutated into secret orders, elite institutions, and modern-day councils that still shape our world from behind the scenes. In ancient Babylon, the priesthood wasn't about faith, it was about power. But who were the priests of Babylon? They tracked the stars, predicted eclipses, and regulated time. They controlled food, fertility rites, temple economies, offers and rituals of fear. The priests decided who was pure and who was expendable. They designed astrological calendars, dictated harvest festivals, and interpreted the will of the gods, often to serve their own political and financial agenda. These were technocrats in robes, the true rulers behind the kings. Their temple schools were early think tanks, combining astronomy, geometry, pharmacology, and alchemical lore with ritual blood magic. The system they built was astonishingly modern in the blueprint that never changed. A class of visible rulers crowned and worshipped, and a class of invisible advisors who whispered in their ears. They used sacred geometry and ritual architecture to align cities with stars, and they took control of language, numbers, and mythology to shape mass behavior. Sound familiar? Now ask yourself, who are the priests of our time? Let's take a look at one example of our own time, the United Nations headquarters in New York. Are there any hidden symbols in the United Nations and beyond? Well, outside, we see a statue of a man beating a sword into a plowshare, a reference to Isaiah 2 verse 4, but also a symbol of enforced peace through one world governance. The UN Meditation Room, designed by Doug Hammarskjöld, contains a black magnetic monolith altar in a trapezoidal room with no windows. The floor plan and shape resemble ancient ziggurats and inner sanctums of Babylonian temples. Behind the UN sits a Lucis Trust publishing house, originally called the Lucifer Publishing Company, founded by theosophist Alice Bailey, who wrote about the return of the hierarchy spiritual overlords waiting to reclaim Earth. These aren't coincidences. They're echoes of a blueprint. The old robes are gone, replaced by suits, lab coats, conference badges, and sketchy Nobel Prizes. The important question is, who are the priests now? What we can see and know is that today's priesthood includes global central bankers who control modern financial temples, banks, big tech executives who monitor and partly own your digital soul, UN policymakers, WEF think tanks, who architects and ngos, who dictate moral authority and mass rituals, celebrity shamans and New Age gatekeepers, pushing inverted one-sided spiritualism. They still practice divination, but now with data, not bones. They still perform rituals, now with media spectacles, not temple sacrifices. And just like before, they are unelected, unaccountable, and untouchable, as you can see in the EU. The Babylonian priesthood never left, and so the temples never closed. It merged with science, merged with corporations, knows, and merged with governance. Today they rule from glass towers, not stone ones, but their goal remains unchanged: control time, control thought, and control destiny. In episode 4, we explore the bloodlines of Babylon, from Nimrod to Nebuchadnezzar, and how these ancient families may still pull strings behind thrones and currencies. Share, subscribe, click the bell to stay informed about the latest updates and stay alert. And remember, you'll never know what you don't know. Babylon did not just give us myths and monuments. It created and gave us bloodlines. Lines of kings, priests, and hybrid rulers, claiming divine right through ancestry that may trace back not just to ancient gods, but to the Anunnaki themselves. In this episode, we trace the royal DNA trail, from Nimrod and Nebuchadnezzar to the monarchs, bankers, and popes of today. And we ask the forbidden question: are these ancient bloodlines still in control, behind modern religion, governments, and finance? Our story begins with Nimrod, the mighty hunter and builder of Babel, Nineveh, and Calah, said in Genesis 10 to be a mighty one on earth. The first god king, in some apocryphal texts, he is portrayed as a hybrid, possibly a Nephilim descendant. His ambition: to defy the highest and unify humanity under one government, one language, and one god himself. Sounds familiar? Nimrod's cult, through Semiramis, birthed the mother-son worship system later seen as Isis and Horus, Mary and Jesus, and replicated across tribal and imperial religions. A millennium later, Nebuchadnezzar II expands Babylon into an empire, claiming divine rulership through Marduk, the archetype of absolute power. His bloodline likely absorbed those of earlier Sumerian kings and possibly elements of the Watchers, the divine beings described in the Book of Enoch. He built the famed Ishtar Gate, adorned with dragons and lions, symbols of dominion and hybrid authority. His dynasty is linked to Daniel's prophecy of the Statue of World Empires, where Babylon is the golden head. And that golden head never disappeared. It simply wore new crowns across empires, cultures, and continents. Let's fast forward and check how bloodlines crossed religions and borders over time. Because the Babylonian model didn't vanish, it was simply inherited by several religions. For example, how was the Jewish lineage, the House of David, created? Many elite Jewish families claim a descent from King David, through whom the messianic line flows. Today, dynasties like the Rothschilds claim noble blood, often tied to Kabbalistic and Babylonian priestly knowledge. On the other hand, the Merovingian dynasty, founders of France, claim descent from Jesus and Mary Magdalene, a Christian royalty bloodline popularized by the Da Vinci Code, but with deep roots in Babylonian mother goddess systems. They allegedly intermarried with the Babylonian priesthood descended families and still maintain links to European royal houses. The Quraysh tribe, or Islamic caliphates, from Quraysh to modern kings, to which Prophet Muhammad belonged, also claim noble ancestry. The Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, for instance, claims direct descent, controlling key religious sites. But behind these lineages lie older priestly lineages from Sumer, Akkad, and Babylon, hidden beneath Islamic, not Babylonian symbols. And thus many secret societies, from the Knights Templar to the Rosicrucians and Freemasons, were obsessed over blood purity, genealogy, and divine rights, claiming elite bloodlines and hybrid continuity. But why? Because Babylon taught them that blood is power. A few of the most notable families believed to be linked to this ancient line: the Rothschilds, the Windsors, the Habsburgs, Medici, and Black nobility, the Rockefellers and Bush dynasty. Even Pope Francis, who died in 2025, is a Jesuit, the modern continuation of Babylon's priestly power structure, cloaked in theology. So we can conclude that the golden head of Daniel's statue never crumbled. It was inherited, interbred, and smartly masked. The living head of gold is still here. These ancient bloodlines may be the link between the fallen angels of Enoch, the Anunnaki of Sumer, and the elites of today. If so, they sit in parliaments, palaces, banks, and boardrooms. You'll never see them on the ballot, and yet they rule. In episode 5, we'll reveal how Babylon fell, and yet its religion survived. We'll track how the mystery cults, rituals, and occult symbols spread through Rome, Egypt, and the Vatican. Share this episode if you're ready to follow the blood trail. Click the bell and subscribe to be notified when the next episode will get online. And remember, you'll never know what you don't know. When Babylon fell, its armies crumbled, its walls shattered, its kings were no more. But its religion strangely survived. Not in ruins, but hidden in robes. Not in temples, but in smart institutions that still rule us today. In 539 BC, Cyrus the Great of Persia entered Babylon without resistance. That was the fall of Babylon and the secret escape of the mystery schools. The political empire collapsed, but the priests of Babylon did not disappear. Instead, they spread and relocated, taking their written and unwritten knowledge, rituals, symbols, and bloodlines with them. So where did they go? To Pergamon in Asia Minor? To Alexandria in Egypt, where Babylonian rites merged with Hermeticism, and eventually to Rome. The cults of Mithras, Cybele, Isis, and Bacchus carried the Babylonian formula of the mystery cults with the Babylonian DNA invested in Roman religion. Adopting 1. Rituals of death and rebirth. 2. Secret initiations. Mundram, astrological symbolism. 4th, and worship of divine hybrids and sacred kings. The Roman high elite were initiates, including senators, generals, and emperors. Even the architecture, Domes, obelisks, arches, echoes Babylonian forms. When Constantine converted to Christianity, he didn't destroy the mystery religions. He absorbed them into the Vatican, Rome's final Babylonian form and current system. The Roman Catholic Church is not at all the enemy of Babylon. It is its latest vessel. So wake up and look closer. Did you notice the mitre worn by popes and bishops? A stylized version of the fish hat of Dagon, a Babylonian deity? Or did you see the obelisk in St. Peter's Square, a phallic fertility symbol from ancient Egypt and Babylon? Or the keys of St. Peter? Echo the twin keys of the Babylonian gate gods guarding sacred knowledge. It's everywhere if you open your eyes wide enough. And beneath the Vatican lies a necropolis, a city of the dead, aligned with ancient solar worship patterns. Many assume the Freemasons, Illuminati, and Jesuits are the central powers, the so-called hidden orders and secret societies, or Babylon's true heirs. But behind them lie far older, less-known sects with direct roots in Babylonian priesthood. For example, the Brotherhood of the Snake, an alleged pre-Sumerian priesthood worshipping Enki, the bringer of knowledge. Their remnants influenced Egyptian priestcraft and Gnostic dualism, or the Order of Melchizedek, claiming priest kingship and eternal divine authority. These teachings run through Kabbalah, Rosicrucianism, and esoteric Christianity. The Sabbatian Frankist movement, a hidden heretical sect within Judaism. They reversed moral codes, practiced ritual inversion, and influenced banking, revolutions, and even the foundations of Zionism, the cult of Sol Invictus, worship of the unconquered sun, absorbed into Christian iconography, the halo, sun disk, Christmas, originally Sol's birthday, December 25th, and the Illustre Jesuit Order, not merely Catholic missionaries, but an international intelligence network deeply tied to Babylonian astrology, sacred geometry, and global governance through education, infiltration, and blackmail. These orders preserve, encrypt, and deploy the wisdom of Babylon, not for liberation, but for total control and world domination. If you pay attention, you will find and see their symbols that never died. The all-seeing eye, originally the eye of Enlil, god of surveillance. The double-headed eagle, representing dual kingship, spiritual and temporal. The caduceus, Enki's twin serpents, later Mercury's staff. The pentagram, symbolizing Venus, associated with Ishtar. You see these symbols in military medals, corporate logos, university seals, government architecture, and contracts. The veil is actually very thin. You just need to know what to look for. Babylon fell above ground, but the priesthood didn't die, it just went underground. But below the surface, its priesthood, its religion, its rituals, its cults, survived and spread like a mycelial network beneath history, and it rebranded itself as science without soul, religion without truth, power without accountability. And it still continues. In cathedrals, boardrooms, and secret halls, and through media, it shapes the beliefs, fears, and desires of entire civilizations. It is that powerful. In episode 6, we follow the line of this hidden priesthood into modern politics and finance, as we uncover how Babylon gave birth to the world's first current banking systems, and how that same model became the backbone of global control today. Share this if you're ready to follow the symbols that surround you daily, because as always, you'll never know what you don't know. In the last episode, number 5, we revealed how Babylon's religion survived, not through belief, but through structure. Its mystery cults, symbols, and power systems infiltrated Rome, Egypt, and the Vatican. But now in episode 6, we follow the line of this hidden priesthood into the modern world of finance and politics, as we expose how Babylon didn't just invent myths, it invented the bank. Let's rewind 4,000 years. In ancient Babylon, the temple was not just a spiritual center, it was a bank, court, library, grain silo, real estate registry, and lending office all in one. Therefore, we could say those were temple economics and the first financial empire. The priests recorded debts on clay tablets. They enforced them through sacred authority. Interest-bearing loans, taxation systems, and even credit scores all have roots in Sumerian and Babylonian temple economies. The word capital itself traces back to cattle, a form of wealth recorded in early Mesopotamia. This was the birth of control through debt. And so the Babylonian banking system was reborn in modern finance. That same structure spread like a virus, and it went through Rome's tax system, backed by priestly scribes, through medieval European banking, dominated by religious orders, and finally through the Rothschild's central banking model we know today. Let's connect the dots. The Bank of England, founded in 1694, created money out of nothing, issuing notes backed by public debt. Sound familiar? That's Babylon 2.0. The Federal Reserve, created in 1913 by elite banking families like the Rockefellers, Warburgs, and Rothschilds, operates in near-total secrecy and answers to no democratic body. And now, private banks lend money they don't have, backed by confidence and fear. Just like Babylonian priests did with the gods. Who really owns the system? Global financial control isn't conspiracy, it's public data. 8 individuals own as much wealth as half the world. BlackRock and Vanguard own controlling shares in nearly every major corporation, from Pfizer to Meta to CNN. And the Bank for International Settlements in Basel operates as the central bank of central banks, with diplomatic immunity. These entities don't just hold wealth, they shape policy, influence elections, and fund wars. They are today's priesthood, and their altar is the digital screen, and your debt is their prayer. We have shifted from gold to code when Babylon entered the digital age. Originally, Babylon's power was based on gold, land, and labor. Now it's based on data, algorithms, and perception. You don't need to be chained if you're distracted by obligations. You don't need to fear hell if you fear missing a mortgage payment. With the rise of digital currencies, programmable money, and central bank digital currencies, the priesthood no longer needs clay tablets. It has code, it has AI, it has complete surveillance over your economic behavior. Babylon's laws, Babylon's chains. One final twist. The first known legal code, the Code of Hammurabi, was Babylon's law, Babylon's chains, inscribed in stone, and was about contracts, property, wages, and penalties. Law and finance were born together, and today corporate law, international trade, and taxation still reflect that Babylonian hierarchy. Those at the top write the rules, those below obey and pay. So Babylon never ended. It rebranded with priesthoods and suits and screens. The temple became the bank, the robe became the suit, and the sacred ritual became the transaction. They no longer chant mantras. They push monetary policy through Wall Street and media. But the outcome is the same: servitude dressed as civilization. In episode 7, we uncover the next phase. How Babylon's priesthood didn't just want your labor, they wanted your mind. We'll explore the origins of mass media, education, and entertainment as tools of mental control, and how today's algorithms have replaced ancient rituals. Follow the symbols, follow the money, follow the silence, click the bell and subscribe so we can keep you posted, because you'll never know what you don't know. In the last episode, we saw how Babylon's priesthood moved from gold to code, controlling modern finance with the same logic as ancient temples. But the real prize isn't your wallet, it's your mind. Babylonian priests didn't just extract labor or wealth, they shaped worldviews through symbolism, ritual, and stories to place you in mental slavery, the next evolution of control. Fast forward 4,000 years, and the method has evolved. The altar is now a screen, the sermon is a scrolling feed, and the new priests, nerds, coders, media executives, and behavioral psychologists. Mass education, once meant to free minds, became the new Tower of Babel, not to unify language, but to program behavior by mass media and from pulpits to programs. The first public schools in Prussia weren't designed for enlightenment, they were designed to produce obedient workers and soldiers. This model was exported worldwide. Enter the 20th century. Radio, television, film, and the gaming world created a monoculture of values, beliefs, and desires. manufactured by the few, consumed by the many. Edward Bernays, the father of modern propaganda, openly said, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society." He didn't call it manipulation, he called it public relations. Today, attention is currency. It changed from symbols to screens, and so ancient rituals went digital. Social media isn't just entertainment, it's hidden behavioral conditioning. Platforms use machine learning to track your every scroll, click, and pause, to predict your preferences, knowledge, and fears, and to serve you content to reinforce beliefs, isolate you, or provoke emotion. Sounds familiar? The Babylonian priesthood controlled belief through sacred symbols and fear. Now algorithms do it smarter, faster, and invisibly. Entertainment nowadays is used as ritual and education as indoctrination. Music videos, video games, even cartoons are littered with all kinds of occult symbols. The all-seeing eye, obelisks and pyramids, Saturnian rings, checkerboard floors, monarch butterflies, and shattered mirrors. These are not just artistic choices. They're psychological triggers used for decades in MK Ultra and related mind control experiments. Repetition, trauma, reward. The ritual cycle is now packaged in HD. Meanwhile, education discourages critical thought, intuition, and questioning. The same values the Babylonian priests suppressed among slaves and serfs. The main question is, who owns even your subconscious feelings and thoughts? The control of the body was just phase one. The control of the narrative, your belief system, and ultimately the sense of self. That's the final frontier. You are no longer chained in a temple. You're voluntarily plugged into a digital Babylon, an empire of dopamine loops, virtue signaling, outrage, and distraction. In episode 8, we explore how the mental programming of Babylon evolved into something even more potent, the creation of false gods through ideology, science, and celebrities. We'll show how ancient priesthoods rebranded themselves as thought leaders, gurus, and experts, all to keep one thing intact, the magical pyramid. Subscribe, click the bell, so we can keep you posted on the next episodes. Because as always, you'll never know what you don't know. In the last episode, we uncovered how Babylon's priesthood evolved from temples to televisions, replacing sacred rituals with algorithms and replacing priests with programmers. But the deeper question remains, what happened to the gods? Was there a shift in the control system? The earliest civilizations like Sumer, Babylon, Akkad, Egypt, all practiced polytheism, the worship of multiple gods. These gods weren't omnipotent or all-loving. They were brutal, territorial, flawed, power-hungry. They waged wars, made mistakes, had sex with humans, and demanded sacrifice. The Anunnaki pantheon wasn't moral, it was hierarchical. The divine realm mirrored the elite ruling class. But something changed. Around 1200 before the Common Era, we begin to see a radical shift. The merging of multiple deities into one supreme god named Aton, a move that originated, according to many scholars, in Egypt under Akhenaten, and later solidified in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This wasn't about truth, it was about smart efficiency. One god, one authority is automatically one control center, and therefore much easier to manage. Monotheism introduced absolute obedience, and that made monotheism a political power. No competing narratives, no divine rebellion stories, no balance of masculine or feminine archetypes, just one God, one book, one path, and of course, everyone else is wrong. Conveniently, the monotheistic God was always on the side of the king. Religious institutions merged with state power, becoming gatekeepers of history, morality, law, sexuality, knowledge, and worldview. Dissent became heresy, curiosity became sin, alternative thinking became punishable. What Babylon managed through rituals and class, monotheism achieved through a general belief in guilt. Ironically, even as religion faded in secular culture, polytheism returned, in disguise as modern idols. This was the return of the old gods in new forms. Today we worship brands, celebrities, money, billionaires, and scientific dogmas. Elon Musk, ironically, religion Elon God, monotheism is religion for a general Elon Musk. Today we worship and Elon the return of this was the guilt, brand, and